The morning fog hung thick over the grounds of Clarence House as Thomas Hartwell adjusted his ceremonial uniform for what he believed would be another routine day. For 15 years he had served as one of the palace guards, watching over the royal family with unwavering dedication. His polished boots clicked against the cobblestones as he made his way to his assigned position, the weight of his responsibilities settling familiar on his shoulders. Thomas had always been different from the other guards. While they focused on the present moment, scanning for immediate threats and maintaining protocol, Thomas possessed an unusual gift for noticing details that others missed. His keen eye had helped solve several security concerns over the years, earning him quiet respect among his colleagues and superiors. However, what set him apart most was his deep knowledge of royal history and an almost obsessive interest in the artifacts and treasures that filled the various royal residences. On this particular October morning, Thomas received an unexpected assignment. His supervisor, Captain Morrison, approached him with a grave expression that immediately caught Thomas's attention. The captain was known for his steady demeanor, rarely showing emotion even in the most challenging situations. "Hartwell," Captain Morrison began, his voice lower than usual, "I need you to handle a special assignment today. Queen Camilla has requested additional security for her private apartments while she's away attending a charity event in Scotland." Thomas nodded, understanding the importance of such duties. Royal security was never taken lightly, especially when it involved the private quarters of senior family members. These spaces contained not only personal belongings but often housed priceless artifacts, family heirlooms, and documents of historical significance. "There's more," Captain Morrison continued, glancing around to ensure their conversation remained private. "Her Majesty has expressed concern about some items that may have been misplaced during the recent renovations. She specifically mentioned some pieces that belonged to the late Queen Elizabeth II. Your knowledge of royal collections makes you the best choice for this assignment." The mention of the late Queen's belongings sent a shiver of anticipation through Thomas. Queen Elizabeth II had possessed one of the most extensive private collections of royal artifacts in history. Many of these pieces held not just monetary value, but carried centuries of royal tradition and family history. The thought that some might be missing was deeply troubling. As Thomas made his way to Queen Camilla's private residence within the palace complex, his mind raced with possibilities. The renovations had been extensive, involving multiple teams of workers, craftsmen, and designers. During such large-scale projects, it wasn't uncommon for items to be temporarily moved, stored, or even accidentally misplaced. However, when it came to royal artifacts, even the smallest oversight could result in the loss of irreplaceable historical treasures. The private apartments were unlike the public areas of the palace that Thomas usually guarded. Here, the atmosphere was more intimate, filled with personal photographs, comfortable furniture, and the kind of lived-in warmth that spoke of daily life rather than ceremonial grandeur. Yet even in this personal space, the weight of royal history was evident in every carefully chosen piece of art, every antique table, and every ornate mirror that reflected centuries of royal occupancy. Thomas began his inspection methodically, walking through each room with the trained eye of both a security professional and a student of royal history. In the main sitting room, he noticed several display cases that appeared to have been recently rearranged. The lighting was different too, suggesting that items had been moved during the renovation process. He made careful notes of everything he observed, knowing that even the smallest detail might prove significant. It was in the private study that Thomas first noticed something unusual. The room was lined with built-in bookcases that reached from floor to ceiling, filled with leather-bound volumes, many of which were first editions or books with particular significance to the royal family. However, one section of the bookshelf appeared different from the rest. The wood grain didn't quite match, and there was a subtle variation in the aging that suggested this particular panel might be newer than the surrounding shelves. Thomas approached the bookshelf carefully, running his fingers along the edge of the suspicious panel. His years of experience had taught him to trust his instincts, and something about this particular section felt wrong. As he pressed gently against the panel, he felt it give slightly, as if it wasn't quite secure in its position. Looking around to ensure he was alone, Thomas carefully examined the panel more closely. What he discovered made his heart race. The panel was actually a cleverly concealed door, designed to blend seamlessly with the surrounding bookshelf. This wasn't uncommon in old royal residences, where hidden passages and secret compartments were often built for security purposes or simply as architectural curiosities. The discovery of a hidden compartment wasn't necessarily alarming in itself. Many royal residences contained such features, often used for storing important documents or valuable items. However, the fact that this particular compartment appeared to have been recently accessed, combined with Queen Camilla's concerns about missing items, suggested that Thomas might have stumbled upon something significant. With careful deliberation, Thomas decided to investigate further. His duty as a palace guard was to ensure the security of royal property and family members, and this discovery could be directly related to the missing artifacts that had prompted his assignment. He pressed the concealed mechanism that operated the hidden door, and it swung open silently on well-oiled hinges. Inside the hidden compartment, Thomas found what appeared to be a small storage space, approximately 3 feet wide and 2 feet deep. The space was lined with dark velvet, suggesting it had been designed to house valuable or delicate items. However, the compartment was not empty. Instead, Thomas discovered several wooden boxes, each carefully labeled with dates and cryptic notations that he didn't immediately understand. The largest box bore a label that made Thomas's breath catch in his throat. In elegant handwriting, it read, "Personal Collection, ER2, Private Study Items, 1953-2022. The significance of these dates was immediately clear to Thomas. They spanned the entire reign of Queen Elizabeth II, from her coronation year to the year of her passing. This box apparently contained items from the late Queen's personal collection that had been stored away, possibly during the recent renovations. Thomas carefully lifted the first box from the compartment, noting its considerable weight. The wood was of high quality, with brass fittings that had been polished to a warm glow. As he opened the lid, he was greeted by the sight of several smaller compartments, each lined with silk and designed to protect its contents from damage. The organization and care evident in the storage suggested that these items had been deliberately and carefully preserved. The first item that caught Thomas's eye was a small silver photograph frame, tarnished with age but still elegant in its simplicity. The photograph inside showed a young Queen Elizabeth II with Prince Philip, taken sometime in the early years of her reign. However, it wasn't the photograph itself that was remarkable, but rather the inscription on the back of the frame. In the Queen's own handwriting, it read, "For my private moments of remembrance, ER." This was clearly a deeply personal item, not one of the official portraits or ceremonial photographs that filled the public areas of the palace. The intimate nature of the inscription suggested that this frame had held special meaning for the late Queen, perhaps sitting on her private desk where she could see it during her daily work. As Thomas continued to examine the contents of the box, he discovered several other items that appeared to be from the Queen's personal collection. There was a small jeweled brooch that he didn't recognize from any official portraits, a leather-bound diary with entries in the Queen's handwriting, and a collection of letters tied with a blue ribbon. Each item seemed to tell a story of the Queen's private life, away from the public eye and the weight of royal duty. The discovery of these items raised immediate questions in Thomas's mind. Why were they hidden in a secret compartment in Queen Camilla's residence? How had they come to be separated from the rest of the late Queen's personal effects? And most importantly, were these the missing items that Queen Camilla had been concerned about? Thomas realized that he needed to handle this discovery with extreme care. These items were not just valuable artifacts. They were deeply personal belongings of the late Queen that might have significant emotional and historical value to the current royal family. The fact that they were found hidden away suggested that their location might not have been properly documented during the transition following the Queen's death. As he continued his examination, Thomas found additional boxes containing similar treasures. One contained what appeared to be childhood mementos that had belonged to the late Queen, including a small silver cup engraved with her childhood nickname and a collection of pressed flowers, each carefully labeled with dates and locations from the royal estates. Another box held correspondence between the Queen and various family members, written in informal, affectionate tones that revealed the warm relationships behind the formal public facade. The most intriguing discovery was a small wooden box that contained what appeared to be a collection of sketches and watercolor paintings. Thomas recognized the artistic style as that of Queen Elizabeth II, who had been known for her talent in painting and her love of capturing scenes from her travels and daily life. These weren't the formal portraits or official paintings that hung in the palace galleries. These were intimate, personal artistic expressions that showed a side of the Queen that few people had ever seen. One painting in particular caught Thomas's attention. It was a watercolor depicting a quiet corner of the gardens at Balmoral, with the late Prince Philip sitting on a bench reading a newspaper. The scene was captured with such warmth and affection that it was clear this was how the Queen saw her husband in their private moments together. The painting was signed simply E and dated just 2 years before Prince Philip's death. As Thomas continued to catalog the hidden treasures, he began to understand the magnitude of his discovery. These weren't just missing artifacts, they were a hidden archive of the late Queen's most personal possessions. Items that revealed her private thoughts, relationships, and artistic expressions. The fact that they were concealed in Queen Camilla's residence suggested a complex story behind their placement and their apparent separation from the main royal collections. The afternoon sun was beginning to fade as Thomas carefully documented each item, taking detailed notes and photographs to ensure that nothing was overlooked. His years of training had taught him the importance of proper documentation, especially when dealing with items of such potential significance. He knew that his discovery would need to be reported to his superiors, but he also understood that the handling of such sensitive material would require careful consideration and discretion. As he worked, Thomas couldn't help but feel a deep sense of responsibility for the treasures he had uncovered. These items represented not just the material heritage of the royal family, but the personal legacy of a monarch who had devoted her entire life to service and duty. The intimate nature of the artifacts made their proper preservation and return to their rightful place all the more important. The discovery also raised troubling questions about how these items had come to be hidden away. Thomas knew that the period following the Queen's death had been chaotic, with numerous arrangements to be made and countless details to be handled. In such circumstances, it would have been possible for personal items to be misplaced or stored in temporary locations that were later forgotten. However, the careful organization of the items in their hidden compartment suggested that someone had deliberately placed them there, perhaps with the intention of keeping them safe during a period of transition or uncertainty. The question remained, who had placed them there, and why hadn't their location been properly documented? As evening approached and Thomas prepared to conclude his inspection, he realized that his routine security assignment had turned into something far more complex and significant. He had uncovered not just missing royal artifacts, but a hidden chapter in the story of the royal family's most recent transition. The careful preservation of these intimate items spoke to their importance, while their hidden location suggested a story that had yet to be fully understood. Thomas carefully returned the items to their boxes and secured the hidden compartment, ensuring that everything remained exactly as he had found it. His duty now was to report his discovery through proper channels, knowing that the information would need to be handled with the utmost sensitivity and discretion. The items he had discovered were more than just lost treasures. They were a bridge between the past and present of the royal family, carrying with them the personal story of a monarch whose private life had remained largely hidden from public view. As he made his way back through the private apartments, Thomas reflected on the weight of his discovery. In his 15 years of service, he had encountered many significant moments, but nothing quite like this. The hidden treasures represented not just material wealth, but the personal heritage of the royal family at a time of great transition and change. The fog that had marked the beginning of his day had lifted, replaced by the clear light of early evening. However, Thomas knew that his discovery had only opened the door to a mystery that would require careful investigation and sensitive handling. The hidden compartment and its precious contents had revealed themselves to him, but the full story of how they came to be there and what their discovery might mean for the royal family remained to be uncovered. Thomas spent a sleepless night wrestling with the implications of his discovery. In his small flat near the palace grounds, he sat at his kitchen table with a cup of tea growing cold in his hands, replaying every detail of what he had found in Queen Camilla's private study. The weight of responsibility pressed heavily on his shoulders as he considered his next steps. By morning, Thomas had made his decision. He would report his findings to Captain Morrison, following proper protocol while emphasizing the sensitive nature of the discovery. However, as he prepared for his morning shift, Thomas received an unexpected message that would complicate his plans considerably. A knock at his door at 6 in the morning was unusual enough to put Thomas immediately on alert. When he opened it, he found a woman in her 50s wearing a conservative business suit and carrying a leather briefcase. Her presence exuded an air of authority that Thomas immediately recognized as coming from the highest levels of the royal household. "Mr. Hartwell," she said with a crisp, professional tone, "I'm Lady Margaret Ashworth from the private secretary's office. I believe we need to discuss your findings from yesterday's security inspection." Thomas felt his stomach drop. The fact that news of his discovery had already reached the private secretary's office suggested that his situation was far more complex than he had imagined. Lady Ashworth's presence at his door, rather than a summons to report to the palace, indicated that this matter required the utmost discretion. "Please come in," Thomas said, stepping aside to allow her entry. His mind raced with questions about how she had learned of his discovery so quickly and what her early morning visit might mean for both the hidden artifacts and his own position. Lady Ashworth settled into his modest sitting room with the composed efficiency of someone accustomed to handling delicate situations. She placed her briefcase carefully beside her chair and fixed Thomas with a steady gaze that suggested she was evaluating both his character and his discretion. "Mr. Hartwell," she began, "your reputation for attention to detail and your knowledge of royal history have not gone unnoticed. Yesterday's assignment was not quite as routine as you may have been led to believe." Thomas felt a chill of apprehension as the implications of her words sank in. His discovery of the hidden compartment had not been accidental. It had been engineered. The realization that he had been carefully selected for the assignment and that his finding of the secret chamber had been anticipated changed everything about his understanding of the situation. "The items you discovered," Lady Ashworth continued, "are indeed missing pieces from Her late Majesty's personal collection. However, the circumstances of their placement in Queen Camilla's residence are more complex than a simple case of misplaced artifacts during renovations." Thomas listened intently as Lady Ashworth began to reveal a story that was far more intricate than he had imagined. In the months following Queen Elizabeth II's death, the process of cataloging and distributing her vast personal collection had proven to be an enormous undertaking. The late Queen had been a careful collector and keeper of family memorabilia, and her private apartments had contained thousands of items ranging from priceless historical artifacts to simple personal mementos. During this process, Lady Ashworth explained, certain items were identified as being particularly sensitive in nature. These included personal correspondence, private artistic works, and family photographs that contained information or depicted scenes that the family felt should remain private, at least for the immediate future. The revelation that the hidden items had been deliberately concealed rather than accidentally misplaced cast Thomas's discovery in an entirely new light. He began to understand that he had stumbled into the middle of a carefully orchestrated effort to protect the most private aspects of the late Queen's personal legacy. The decision was made, Lady Ashworth continued, to temporarily secure these items in a location where they would be safe but accessible should the family decide to review their disposition at a later time. Queen Camilla graciously agreed to provide secure storage in her private residence, using a hidden compartment that had been built into the study decades ago for similar purposes. Thomas was beginning to piece together the full picture. The items had not been lost or forgotten. They had been deliberately hidden as part of a careful plan to protect the late Queen's most private possessions during the transition period following her death. However, this raised new questions about why his discovery had been orchestrated and what role he was being asked to play in the situation. Lady Ashworth seemed to read his thoughts. "The challenge we now face, Mr. Hartwell, is that the location of these items was known only to a small group of individuals, and recent events have raised concerns about the security of this arrangement." She opened her briefcase and withdrew a folder containing what appeared to be security reports and correspondence. The documents were marked with the highest levels of confidentiality markings that Thomas had ever seen, indicating that the information they contained was of the most sensitive nature. "2 weeks ago," Lady Ashworth explained, "we became aware of inquiries being made by certain parties who appear to have knowledge of the existence and possible location of these private items. These inquiries have come from individuals who should not have access to such information, suggesting that there may have been a breach of security somewhere in the chain of people who knew about the hidden storage." The implications of her words were deeply troubling. If unauthorized individuals had learned about the existence and location of the late Queen's most private possessions, the potential for scandal, blackmail, or simple theft was enormous. The items Thomas had discovered were not just valuable, they contained intimate details about the royal family that could be extremely damaging if they fell into the wrong hands. "Your role," Lady Ashworth continued, "is to help us recover these items and transfer them to a more secure location. However, this must be done with absolute discretion and in a manner that doesn't draw attention to their existence or their previous location." Thomas realized that he was being asked to participate in what amounted to a covert operation within the royal household. The items he had discovered needed to be secretly removed from their hiding place and relocated, all while maintaining the appearance that nothing unusual was happening. The complexity of the situation was unlike anything he had encountered in his years of palace service. "There's another complication," Lady Ashworth added, her expression becoming even more serious. "We have reason to believe that someone with access to Queen Camilla's residence may be working with the parties who are seeking these items. This means that the transfer operation must be carried out without the knowledge of the regular household staff or security personnel." The revelation that there might be a traitor within the trusted circle of people with access to Queen Camilla's private apartments added a layer of danger and urgency to the situation. Thomas understood that he was being asked not just to recover valuable items, but to help prevent a potential security breach that could have far-reaching consequences for the royal family. Over the next hour, Lady Ashworth outlined the details of the recovery operation. Thomas would return to his regular duties at Queen Camilla's residence, but this time his mission would be to carefully and systematically remove the hidden items without attracting attention. The operation would need to be carried out over several days, with only a few items removed at a time to avoid suspicion. The items will be transferred to a specially prepared secure facility, Lady Ashworth explained, where they can be properly preserved and where access can be strictly controlled. Eventually, the family will make decisions about the final disposition of these pieces, but for now, our priority is simply to ensure their security. Thomas accepted the assignment with a mixture of excitement and apprehension. The opportunity to play such an important role in protecting the royal family's heritage was an honor, but the risks involved were significant. If he was discovered removing items from the hidden compartment, the consequences for his career and potentially his personal safety could be severe. The following day, Thomas returned to Queen Camilla's residence for what appeared to be another routine security assignment. However, armed with his new understanding of the situation, he approached his duties with heightened awareness and careful planning. Every interaction with household staff, every movement through the private apartments, was now viewed through the lens of potential security threats and the need for absolute discretion. Thomas had been provided with a specially designed briefcase that appeared to be a standard security equipment case, but contained hidden compartments for safely transporting the recovered items. The case was designed to pass casual inspection while providing secure protection for delicate artifacts during transport. On his first day of the recovery operation, Thomas successfully removed 3 items from the hidden compartment: the silver photograph frame, one of the smaller boxes of correspondence, and a leather portfolio containing some of the late Queen's sketches. Each item was carefully wrapped in protective material and secured in the special briefcase before being transported to the designated secure facility. The process was nerve-wracking, requiring Thomas to maintain his normal demeanor while carrying out a covert operation under the noses of his colleagues and the household staff. Every sound, every unexpected encounter, sent adrenaline coursing through his system as he worried about being discovered. However, it was on the second day of the operation that Thomas encountered an unexpected complication. As he was preparing to remove additional items from the hidden compartment, he heard voices approaching the study. Moving quickly, he secured the secret door and positioned himself at one of the windows, appearing to conduct a routine security inspection. 2 people entered the room. Mrs. Helen Crawford, the senior housekeeper who had worked for the royal family for over 20 years, and a man Thomas didn't recognize. The stranger was well-dressed and carried himself with the confidence of someone accustomed to authority, but something about his presence felt wrong to Thomas's trained instincts. "The renovation records should be complete," Mrs. Crawford was saying as they entered. "But there might be additional storage areas that weren't documented during the recent work." Thomas continued his pretense of checking the window locks while straining to hear their conversation. The stranger seemed particularly interested in the built-in bookcases and was examining them with an attention to detail that made Thomas extremely uncomfortable. "These older royal residences often contain hidden features," the man replied, running his hands along the woodwork in a manner that suggested he was searching for something specific. "It's possible that items could have been stored in locations that weren't included in the official inventory." The conversation confirmed Thomas's worst fears. The stranger was clearly searching for the hidden compartment and its contents, and his knowledge of their potential existence suggested that he was connected to the security breach that Lady Ashworth had warned about. Even more troubling was the fact that Mrs. Crawford, a trusted member of the household staff, appeared to be assisting in the search. Thomas realized that he was witnessing the very security threat that his operation was designed to address. The question now was whether he should attempt to continue his covert removal of the items or whether the presence of the searchers made the situation too dangerous to proceed. As the conversation continued, Thomas learned that the search was being conducted under the pretext of completing an insurance inventory following the renovations. Mrs. Crawford seemed to believe this explanation, but the stranger's intense focus on finding hidden storage areas suggested that his true purpose was far more specific than a general inventory. When the two visitors finally left the study, Thomas remained hidden near the window for several minutes, ensuring that they were truly gone before approaching the secret compartment. The close call had shaken him, but it had also reinforced the urgency of his mission. If the unauthorized searchers continued their investigation, they would eventually discover the hidden door and its contents. Thomas made a difficult decision. Despite the increased risk, he would accelerate the recovery operation, removing more items each day in order to complete the transfer before the searchers could locate the hidden compartment. The decision meant accepting greater risk of discovery, but the alternative of allowing the sensitive items to fall into unauthorized hands was unacceptable. Over the next 3 days, Thomas worked with careful efficiency to remove the remaining items from the hidden storage. Each day brought new challenges as the unauthorized searches continued, with the stranger returning repeatedly and gradually narrowing his focus to the area around the secret compartment. On the final day of the operation, Thomas encountered his most dangerous moment. As he was securing the last of the items in his special briefcase, he heard footsteps approaching the study more quickly than usual. With no time to properly conceal the evidence of his activities, Thomas quickly closed the hidden door and moved to a different part of the room, hoping that his presence would appear natural and routine. The stranger entered alone this time, and his demeanor was different from his previous visits. There was an urgency and focus to his movements that suggested he believed he was close to finding what he sought. Thomas watched with growing tension as the man approached the exact section of bookshelf that concealed the hidden compartment. For several agonizing minutes, the stranger examined the area with increasing intensity, running his hands along the wooden panels and pressing against various sections in a systematic search for hidden mechanisms. Thomas realized that discovery of the secret door was imminent, and he prepared himself for the possibility that his covert operation was about to be exposed. However, at the crucial moment, Lady Ashworth appeared in the doorway of the study with 2 uniformed security officers. Her presence immediately changed the dynamic in the room, as the stranger found himself confronted by official authority rather than conducting an undisturbed search. "I believe there's been some confusion about your authorization to be in this area," Lady Ashworth said to the stranger with cool professionalism. "Perhaps we should discuss your access requirements in a more appropriate setting." The confrontation that followed revealed the full extent of the security breach that Thomas's operation had been designed to address. The stranger, who identified himself as a private investigator working for unnamed clients, had been attempting to locate and photograph the late Queen's private items for purposes that were never clearly explained. Mrs. Crawford, it emerged, had been innocently manipulated into providing access to areas of the residence that should have been off-limits to outside investigators. Her long service and trusted position had made her an ideal target for social engineering, as she had been led to believe that she was simply assisting with legitimate administrative work. As Thomas witnessed the removal of the unauthorized investigator and the beginning of a formal security review, he realized that his covert operation had been completed just in time. The final items from the hidden compartment were safely secured in his briefcase, and the breach of security had been identified and contained before any damage could be done to the royal family's private legacy. The secure facility where Thomas delivered the recovered items was unlike anywhere he had seen during his years of palace service. Located beneath one of the older buildings in the palace complex, the underground chambers had been specifically designed for the preservation and protection of the royal family's most sensitive historical materials. The environment was climate-controlled to museum standards, and access was restricted to only the highest levels of the royal household administration. Lady Ashworth led Thomas through a series of security checkpoints that required multiple forms of identification and authorization. Each door they passed through represented another layer of protection for the invaluable contents stored within the facility. The level of security impressed Thomas and reinforced his understanding of just how important his mission had been. The items you recovered will remain here until the family makes final decisions about their long-term preservation and accessibility, Lady Ashworth explained as they walked through the main storage area. Some may eventually be returned to public collections, while others will likely remain in private family custody indefinitely. The storage area contained rows of specially designed cases and cabinets, each carefully labeled and cataloged. Thomas could see that the facility housed not just the items he had recovered, but thousands of other artifacts representing centuries of royal history. The scope of the collection was breathtaking, encompassing everything from ancient documents to recent family photographs. As they reached the section where Thomas's recovered items would be stored, Lady Ashworth turned to address him directly. "Your service in this matter has been exemplary, Mr. Hartwell. However, I must emphasize that what you have seen and done over the past week must remain absolutely confidential. The knowledge of this facility's existence and the nature of its contents is restricted to a very small number of people." Thomas nodded his understanding, feeling the weight of the trust that had been placed in him. The experience had given him insights into the royal family's private world that few people would ever possess, and with that knowledge came a responsibility that would last for the rest of his life. Over the following weeks, the investigation into the security breach continued under Lady Ashworth's supervision. The unauthorized investigator who had been discovered in Queen Camilla's study was thoroughly questioned, and his connections were traced back to a network of individuals who specialized in seeking out and potentially exploiting private information about public figures. The investigation revealed that the group had been operating for several years, targeting not just the royal family but other prominent families and institutions. Their methods were sophisticated, involving careful research into organizational structures and the strategic cultivation of unwitting accomplices among trusted staff members. Mrs. Crawford's involvement had been entirely innocent, making her a victim of their manipulation rather than a willing participant in their activities. The discovery of this broader threat led to a comprehensive review of security procedures across all royal residences. Thomas found himself called upon repeatedly to provide input on potential vulnerabilities, drawing on his experience and knowledge to help strengthen protections against similar future breaches. His unique combination of practical security experience and deep knowledge of royal history made him a valuable resource for the Security Enhancement Project. 1 month after the completion of his covert mission, Thomas received an unexpected summons to meet with Prince William, who was taking a direct interest in security matters affecting the royal family. The meeting took place in Prince William's private office at Kensington Palace, a room that balanced the informal atmosphere needed for productive work with the dignity appropriate to his position. Prince William greeted Thomas with the warmth and directness that characterized his interactions with those who served the royal family. "Mr. Hartwell," he began, settling into a comfortable chair across from Thomas, "I wanted to personally thank you for your service in recovering my grandmother's private items. Your discretion and professionalism in handling such a sensitive situation exemplify the best qualities of those who serve our family." The prince's acknowledgement meant more to Thomas than any formal recognition could have. To know that his efforts had directly contributed to protecting Queen Elizabeth II's personal legacy was deeply meaningful, especially coming from one of her beloved grandsons. "The items you recovered," Prince William continued, "include some of my grandmother's most personal possessions. The sketches and paintings in particular represent a side of her that the public never saw, but that was precious to those of us who knew her as a person rather than just as a monarch." Prince William went on to explain that the family had made decisions about the future of the recovered items. Some of the artwork would eventually be displayed in a private family gallery, allowing future generations to appreciate Queen Elizabeth II's artistic talents. The personal correspondence would remain sealed for a designated period, respecting the privacy of those mentioned in the letters while preserving them for future historians. We're also making changes to how such personal collections are handled in the future, Prince William added. Your experience has helped us understand the vulnerabilities in our current systems and the need for more robust protections for private family materials. As a result of his exemplary service, Thomas was offered a promotion to a newly created position within the Royal Protection Service. His role would involve overseeing the security of royal collections and private family materials, combining his expertise in traditional security work with his deep knowledge of royal history and artifacts. The position represented not just career advancement, but the opportunity to continue protecting the royal family's heritage in a more specialized capacity. Thomas accepted the promotion with gratitude and a deep sense of responsibility. His new role would require him to work closely with curators, historians, and conservation experts to ensure that royal artifacts were not only secure, but properly preserved for future generations. The position was challenging, but perfectly suited to his unique combination of skills and interests. 6 months later, Thomas stood in the newly renovated security center that served as the headquarters for his expanded responsibilities. The center combined traditional security monitoring with specialized systems for tracking and protecting valuable artifacts. Multiple screens displayed the status of collections across various royal residences, while sophisticated environmental monitoring ensured that storage conditions remained optimal for preservation. The center also served as a coordination point for the enhanced security measures that had been implemented following the investigation into the breach. New protocols required multiple levels of authorization for access to private collections, and comprehensive background checks had been instituted for all staff members working in areas containing sensitive materials. Thomas's team included specialists in art conservation, historical research, and electronic security systems. Together, they formed a unique unit within the royal household, dedicated specifically to protecting the material heritage of the royal family. The diversity of expertise within the team reflected the complex nature of their mission, which required understanding not just security threats but also the historical and cultural significance of the items they protected. One of Thomas's first major projects in his new role involved creating a comprehensive digital catalog of royal artifacts across all residences. This system would provide detailed information about each item's location, condition, and security status while maintaining the strict access controls necessary to protect sensitive information. The catalog would also serve as a valuable research tool for historians and family members seeking information about specific pieces. The digital cataloging project revealed the true scope of the royal family's private collections. Beyond the well-known treasures displayed in public areas, the family possessed thousands of personal items that documented their history in intimate detail. These ranged from childhood toys preserved by sentimental parents to formal diplomatic gifts that had been retired from active use. As Thomas worked on the cataloging project, he often reflected on the items he had recovered from Queen Camilla's hidden compartment. Those pieces had served as his introduction to the vast private world of royal collecting, opening his eyes to the deeply personal side of royal history that existed alongside the public narrative of ceremony and duty. The recovered items themselves had found their permanent homes within the secure facility. The personal photographs were now part of a private family archive, carefully preserved for future generations while remaining accessible to family members who wished to view them. The artwork had been professionally conserved and was displayed in a private gallery where family members could appreciate Queen Elizabeth II's artistic legacy. Perhaps most significantly, the correspondence recovered from the hidden compartment had provided valuable insights into Queen Elizabeth II's private thoughts and relationships. While these letters remained sealed to protect the privacy of living individuals, they had been carefully preserved and catalogued for future historians who would eventually study them as important primary sources for understanding the late Queen's personal perspective on historical events. The investigation into the security breach had also led to broader changes in how the royal household handled private information. New protocols required regular security reviews of all staff with access to sensitive areas, and ongoing monitoring helped identify potential vulnerabilities before they could be exploited. The changes represented a balance between maintaining the trusted relationships that were essential to royal household operations and protecting against sophisticated threats from those who would exploit such trust. Mrs. Crawford, whose innocent cooperation with the unauthorized investigators had facilitated the security breach, received additional training on recognizing and responding to potential social engineering attempts. Her long service and genuine dedication to the royal family were never questioned. But the incident served as a reminder that even the most trusted staff members could become unwitting targets for those seeking unauthorized access. The private investigator, who had been discovered searching for the hidden compartment, faced serious consequences for his actions. Legal proceedings revealed that he had been working for a network that specialized in gathering private information about prominent families for potential sale to tabloid publications or other interested parties. The case served as a warning to others who might consider similar activities and demonstrated the royal family's commitment to protecting their privacy. As Thomas settled into his new role and responsibilities, he often thought about the chain of events that had begun with what seemed like a routine security assignment. His discovery of the hidden compartment had revealed not just missing artifacts, but a complex web of threats and vulnerabilities that had required comprehensive response and long-term changes to royal security procedures. The experience had also given Thomas a deeper appreciation for the human side of royal history. The items he had recovered and protected were not just valuable objects. They were the tangible remnants of real relationships, personal experiences, and private moments in the lives of people who had devoted themselves to public service. Each sketch, photograph, and letter told a story of the person behind the crown, revealing the warmth, creativity, and humanity that existed alongside the formal duties of monarchy. 2 years after the original incident, Thomas received an invitation to a private reception celebrating the completion of the security enhancement project. The event was held in one of the smaller staterooms at Buckingham Palace, attended by the security staff, household administrators, and family members who had been involved in the improvements to royal collection protection. During the reception, Queen Camilla approached Thomas personally to thank him for his role in protecting her late mother-in-law's belongings. "Those items meant a great deal to her," Queen Camilla said, with evident emotion. "Knowing that they are now safe and properly preserved gives us all tremendous peace of mind." The Queen's gratitude reinforced Thomas's understanding of the personal significance of his work. The artifacts he protected were not just historical objects. They were irreplaceable links to beloved family members and cherished memories. The responsibility of safeguarding such treasures was both an honor and a sacred trust that required the highest standards of professionalism and care. As the reception concluded and Thomas made his way home through the familiar palace grounds, he reflected on how much his life and career had changed since that foggy morning when he had first discovered the hidden compartment. What had begun as a routine assignment had evolved into a specialized career protecting the royal family's most precious possessions and private heritage. The work continued to present new challenges and discoveries. Each royal residence contained its own unique collection of artifacts and potential security vulnerabilities. Thomas's team regularly uncovered forgotten storage areas, rediscovered lost items, and identified new threats to the safety of royal collections. The combination of historical research, conservation science, and modern security technology made every day different and engaging. Most importantly, Thomas had found his true calling in protecting the material heritage of the royal family. His work ensured that future generations would be able to appreciate and learn from the artifacts and personal belongings that documented centuries of royal history. The items he safeguarded would continue to tell their stories long after he had retired, serving as tangible connections between the past and future of the monarchy. The hidden compartment in Queen Camilla's study had been permanently sealed following the removal of its contents. But its discovery had led to systematic searches for similar hidden storage areas throughout royal residences. These searches had revealed dozens of forgotten storage spaces, many containing items of historical significance that had been lost or overlooked during previous transfers and renovations. Each new discovery added to the growing understanding of the royal family's vast private collections and the challenges involved in properly preserving and protecting such extensive holdings. Thomas's expertise in both security and royal history made him an essential figure in these ongoing discoveries, as his knowledge helped distinguish between items of genuine historical importance and those that were simply old but not particularly significant. The success of the Security Enhancement Project and the recognition of Thomas's contributions had established him as a respected figure within the royal household administration. His unique career path from traditional palace guard to specialist in royal collections protection served as an example of how individual dedication and expertise could lead to opportunities for meaningful service at the highest levels. As Thomas looked toward the future, he knew that his work protecting the royal family's heritage would continue to evolve and expand. New technologies would provide better tools for preservation and security, while ongoing historical research would reveal new aspects of royal history that required protection and study. His role in safeguarding these treasures for future generations remained a source of deep professional satisfaction and personal pride.